Do you remember those mornings? The alarm clock blares. You stare blankly at the ceiling, doing cold, calculated math in your head. Do I really have to go today? Maybe you weren't actually sick, but you certainly weren't feeling enthusiastic. So you'd lie there and imagine the impossible. What if I just didn't go? Not ditching forever, just one day. One perfect, stolen afternoon with no homework, no teachers, no pop quizzes, and zero responsibilities. Just total, unadulterated freedom. Most of us only dreamed about it, but in the summer of 1986, one teenager actually pulled it off, and somehow he made the entire world wish they were sitting in the passenger seat right next to him. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Nostalgia. I'm your host, Moonlight Peterson, and today we're breaking down a film that defined a decade, John Hughes' masterpiece, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. When Ferris Bueller hit theaters on June 11th, 1986, American pop culture was firing on all cylinders. Madonna was topping the charts with Live to Tell. Tom Cruise was tearing up the skies in Top Gun. And The Cosby Show and Family Ties ruled Thursday night television. 80s teen cinema was already a juggernaut, but most of it was defined by angst, the heavy emotional baggage of the Brat Pack, suburban heartbreak, and adolescent alienation. Then came Ferris. On the surface, it was a simple comedy about skipping school, but underneath, it was about something far larger, remembering what it was like to be 17, to believe the world was wide open, that a single afternoon could change everything, and maybe most importantly, that you could get away with it. Ferris Bueller isn't the smartest kid in school. He isn't the strongest, the richest, or the most talented. In fact, on paper, he's probably the last person any sane parent would want their teenager hanging around with. But he possesses one quality that's completely irresistible. He believes life is meant to be lived, not watched, not analyzed, but lived. It's a philosophy he sums up in the line that defined a generation.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
To understand why that sentence still echoes 40 years later, you have to understand the pressure cooker inside which it was born. By 1985, writer-director John Hughes was already the undisputed voice of American youth, having churned out 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, and Pretty in Pink. But Ferris Bueller came out of a moment of absolute Hollywood desperation. A Writers Guild of America strike was looming in early July 1985. Paramount executives approached Hughes with a simple request: give us a pitch, give us a script, and do it now before the cameras are forced to stop. Hughes didn't outline for months. He didn't sit in development hell. He locked himself in a room and wrote the entire screenplay for Ferris Bueller in just 6 days. Think about that. 6 days to write a movie that has endured for nearly 4 decades. Because of that frantic deadline, the script was fueled by raw, unedited kinetic energy. Everything moves, everything flows, nothing feels labored or overthought, which ironically is exactly how Ferris himself operates. And Hughes threw out the Hollywood rulebook on page 1. Standard screenwriting dictates that you introduce your protagonist, establish high stakes, and build a slow narrative conflict. Instead, before the plot even blinks, Ferris turns directly to the camera, looks us straight in the eyes, and starts letting us in on his sick-day scam. The fourth wall isn't just broken, it's shattered before breakfast. Ferris isn't sitting there trying to impress us. He's saying, grab your coat, you're coming with me. That single structural choice changes the entire dynamic. For the next 100 minutes, you aren't just a spectator sitting in a dark theater. You're his co-conspirator, playing hooky right alongside him. Now, every classic film has its own secret sauce, but with Ferris Bueller, the entire enterprise hinged on a razor-thin casting wire. Let's be real. If Ferris isn't instantly magnetic, the premise collapses. If he comes across as arrogant, entitled, or mean-spirited, you hate him by the end of scene 1. He He lies to his parents, scams his principal, steals a priceless car, and manipulates his best friend. On paper, he's a villain. Hollywood knew how delicate this balance was, and the studio threw a staggering net of talent into the mix. Early on, executives floated massive names. Johnny Depp was offered the role of Ferris, but had to turn it down due to scheduling conflicts. Jim Carrey auditioned. Tom Cruise and Robert Downey Jr. were both heavily considered. Imagine Robert Downey Jr.'s hyperkinetic cynicism or Jim Carrey's wild physical energy in that iconic leopard print vest. It would have been a completely different movie. The magic clicked when John Hughes cast a young Broadway veteran named Matthew Broderick. Broderick didn't play Ferris as a cool guy rebel or a class clown. He played him with an effortless, boyish warmth. He brought just enough earnest innocence to the character that when he looked into the camera, you didn't judge him, you trusted him. And finding his inner circle was just as delicate. For Sloane Peterson, Hughes needed someone who didn't feel like a typical 80s trophy girlfriend. He initially looked at Molly Ringwald, felt she didn't fit the specific suave maturity required for Sloane. The role ultimately went to 18-year-old Mia Sara, who brought a sleek, effortless sophistication to the trio. Then there was Cameron Frye, neurotic, overthinking anchor of the film. Alan Ruck won the role, and his casting comes with one of the most legendary trivia facts in cinema history. While Cameron was agonizing over high school graduation, Alan Ruck was actually 29 years old, nearly 30. He was practically old enough to be on the local PTA. But the second he threw on that oversized Detroit Red Wings jersey and slumped his shoulders, he became the ultimate anxious high schooler. Now, while Ferris, Cameron, and Sloane are speeding through downtown Chicago, a parallel masterclass in comedy is playing out back in the suburbs. The sheer rage of Ferris's sister, Jeanie Bueller. Played with brilliant, simmering hostility by Jennifer Grey, Jeanie represents the voice of absolute frustration. She's the sibling who follows every rule, does her homework, and gets treated like an afterthought, while her brother breaks every law in the book and gets praised as a golden child. We've all been there. Her arc isn't a side plot. It's the exact emotional reality of anyone who's ever lived with a charismatic sibling. Jeannie's crusade to catch Ferris leads to one of the greatest cameo sequences in 80s film history. The police station scene. Sitting on the orange plastic couch, furious and under arrest, she meets a sleep-deprived, leather jacket-wearing bad boy played by Charlie Sheen. To prepare for his brief 2-minute role, Sheen actually stayed awake for 48 hours straight to give his character a genuine, worn-out, bleary-eyed edge. Their short, electric back and forth isn't just hilarious. It's the moment Jeanie realizes that her obsession with Ferris's freedom is keeping her trapped. And then, of course, there's Principal Ed Rooney, played with masterclass physical comedy by Jeffrey Jones. Rooney isn't trying to conquer the world. He's a middle management bureaucrat who's lost his mind over one kid skipping school. The brilliance of Rooney is that he believes he's the righteous hero of a grand crusade. The universe responds by punishing him relentlessly. He gets mauled by a guard dog, loses a shoe in deep mud, gets kicked in the face by Jeanie, gets his car towed, and ultimately ends up riding a yellow school bus next to a middle schooler offering him warm melted gummy bears. It's pure cinematic karma. Let's settle a debate. Better yet, let's start one. When you think about Ferris Bueller's Day Off, who's the main character? Ferris, right? His name's in the title. He breaks the fourth wall. He coordinates the grand schemes. He's the guy in the poster. But if you look at classic screenwriting structure, the main character is, by definition, the person who undergoes a fundamental internal transformation. And Ferris is completely static. At the beginning of the movie, Ferris is confident, fearless, and in absolute control. At the end, he's the exact same guy. He hasn't learned a tragic lesson. He hasn't altered his worldview. He's a force of nature that acts upon the world around him. Now compare that to Cameron. Cameron starts the film hiding under a mountain of blankets, paralyzed by health anxieties, terrified of his abusive father, and afraid to make a single move. He's the physical definition of stuck. When Ferris drags Cameron out of bed, he isn't just taking him on a joyride. He's systematically dismantling Cameron's defensive walls. Step by step, stop by stop, Ferris forces Cameron to confront the world outside of his bedroom. This structural dynamic has fueled one of the most famous modern fan theories in cinema, the Fight Club theory. Film buffs have argued for years that Ferris Bueller doesn't actually exist. In this reading, Ferris is merely a mental projection, an imagined, hyper-confident alter ego created by a deeply depressed, bedridden Cameron. The entire day off is an internal, psychological journey happening inside Cameron's mind as he wrestles with the courage needed to stand up to his father. Whether John Hughes intended that reading or not, it highlights a fundamental truth. Cameron is the emotional heart of the story. Look at the quietest, most important scene in the entire movie, a trip to the Art Institute of Chicago. Against the backdrop of silent brass music, the trio walks among masterpieces. There are no punchlines, no slapstick, no high-speed chases. Hughes focuses in on Cameron staring intently at a masterpiece, Sunday afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte. As the camera cuts closer and closer to the canvas, the painted figures vanish and the image dissolves into isolated, meaningless dots of color. Hughes explained that Cameron is looking at that little girl in the center of the painting, terrified that the closer people look at him, the more they'll realize there's nothing there. It's a devastating moment of adolescent angst hidden inside a mainstream comedy. And then comes the turning point, the infamous 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider. After their magical day in the city, they discover the parking garage attendants took the priceless car on a 100-mile joyride. Desperate to erase the proof, they jack up the rear wheels, throw the transmission into reverse, and rest a brick on the gas pedal, hoping to wind the odometer backward. It doesn't work. Cameron, realizing the futility of his lifelong fear, snaps. He begins kicking the car, shouting at his father's memory, asserting his own existence for the first time. When the car slips off the jack, smashes through the glass wall of the elevated garage, and plummets into the ravine below, first-time viewers cringe at the destruction of a multi-million-dollar machine. But it isn't a tragedy. It's Cameron's emancipation. Instead of running away or letting Ferris take the blame, Cameron stands tall. He decides to take ownership, stay put, and face his father. For the first time in 90 minutes, Cameron isn't riding shotgun in someone else's life. He's driving his own. Interestingly, Hughes originally had even more complex subplots planned for the chapter of this story that were left on the cutting room floor. In early drafts and deleted scenes, Ferris actually had two younger siblings, a little brother named Todd and a sister named Kimberly, who were meant to add to the suburban chaos homefront. Hughes ultimately cut them during production to keep the narrative lean and focused strictly on the sibling rivalry between Ferris and Jeanie. There were also expanded lines during the French restaurant scene where Ferris delivers a longer monologue about his anxieties regarding the future, a rare moment where the slick facade almost slipped. Hughes trimmed it because he realized Ferris needed to remain an unbroken beacon of hope for Cameron to lean on. By the spring of 1986, downtown Chicago was experiencing controlled production chaos. John Hughes refused to treat cities like generic studio backlots. He didn't want to shoot on a soundstage in Burbank with a painted background. He wanted you to feel Chicago the way a local feels it. The neighborhood grid, the wind off Lake Michigan, the elevated train lines, and the architectural weight of the skyline. Ferris Bueller was his love letter to his home state. And making that vision a reality required an incredible high-wire act of filmmaking. Take the crown jewel of the movie, the von Steuben Day Parade sequence. Ferris scales a massive parade float, grabs a microphone, and launches into a lip-sync performance of the Beatles' Twist and Shout. The crowd on the street explodes in choreographed, joyous dancing. It feels completely spontaneous, and that's because much of it was. The crew didn't hire thousands of paid extras. Hughes literally crashed the real live von Steuben Day Parade in downtown Chicago with a rogue camera crew. Most of those crowds were ordinary Chicagoans who had no idea a Hollywood movie was being filmed. When Matthew Broderick stepped onto the float, turned up the speakers, the crowd's wild reaction was 100% genuine street energy. Even the construction workers dancing on the scaffolding and the dentist office staff twisting into windows were real people caught up in the moment. Behind that magic, however, was immense technical stress. During the filming of Ferris's epic sprint through backyards at the end of the movie, Matthew Broderick severely injured his knee while jumping over a fence. He had to shoot the rest of those iconic running sequences in intense pain, taking breaks between takes to ice his leg, a detail you'd never guess watching his fluid, triumphant sprint on screen. And then, of course, there's the car. Ferris and Cameron take a '61 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider out of the glass garage. In 1985, an original 250 GT was already worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Today, one fetches over $15 million at auction. Paramount wasn't about to let John Hughes jump a $15 million museum piece over hills or smash it through a glass wall. So the production team hired Modena Design and Development to construct 3 custom replicas built on kit chassis with fiberglass bodies and Ford V8 engines. They looked so authentic that actual Ferrari collectors were horrified when they saw the film, believing Hughes had destroyed a true piece of automotive history. Ferrari even sued the kit car manufacturer shortly after the movie came out for design infringement. And we can't talk about the technical magic of this movie without talking about its legendary soundtrack. And the licensing for Twist and Shout? Hughes took a massive gamble. He didn't just use a cover version. He bought the rights to the original Beatles recording, but he felt the track needed more punch for a parade. So he had horn sections layered over John Lennon's original vocals, a move that actually annoyed Paul McCartney when he first saw the film in theaters, though he later admitted the scene was undeniably iconic. Even the locations themselves became cultural monuments. The famous glass-walled garage house, Ben Rose House, located in Highland Park, Illinois, became an instant landmark of modern architecture. Decades after the film, it sold for over $1 million, specifically preserved by buyers who recognized it as a holy site of 80s cinema. On paper, Ferris Bueller's Day Off shouldn't have been a cinematic titan. Think about it. There is no world-ending threat. There is no championship game, no high-stakes heist, no alien invasion, and no supervillain. The plot revolves around 3 teenagers who decide that an ordinary Wednesday in May belongs to them. When the movie hit theaters on June 11th, 1986, it was an absolute box office juggernaut, earning over $70 million domestically against an estimated $5 million budget. It became one of the top 10 highest-grossing films of the year. Hand-wringing critics in 1986 grumbled that the movie promoted truancy, entitlement, disrespect for authority, but they completely missed the forest for the trees. John Hughes wasn't celebrating irresponsibility or disrespect. He was delivering an urgent warning against sleepwalking through our own lives. When you're 17, you operate under the illusion that your youth is infinite, that there will always be another summer, another weekend, another slow afternoon driving around with your best friends. Then high school ends. People move away for college or jobs. Responsibilities stack up. Time speeds up, and those mundane, ordinary afternoons become the very memories you'd give anything to revisit. Ferris Bueller isn't a hero because he skipped school. He's a hero because he recognized the value of a single day before it was gone. He doesn't waste time. He squeezes every drop of art, music, friendship, and joy out of 24 hours. He reminds us that the mundane routine of life is a choice, and that stepping out of line once in a while isn't just okay, it's necessary for your soul. That's why the movie continues to catch fire with every new generation. Kids watch it today, laugh at Rooney's slapstick demise, wince as the Ferrari plummets into the ravine, crank up the volume during twist and shout, and pass the tape or the stream to their friends. It doesn't belong strictly to 1986. It belongs to anyone, anywhere, who needs a gentle nudge to slow down and enjoy the ride. We spend so much of our lives agonizing over yesterday or stressing about tomorrow that we forget to inhabit today. That is the true, lasting magic of John Hughes' masterpiece. It tells us it's okay to slow down, take the scenic route home, visit the art museum, hold hands with the person you love, and sing at the top of your lungs in the middle of the street. Life doesn't have to be extraordinary every single day, but any given day has the potential to be unforgettable. Thanks for joining me for another deep dive here on Bite-Sized Nostalgia. If you love this journey through Chicago with Ferris, Cameron, and Sloan, make sure to hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you stream your podcasts. Leave us a review and share this episode with the ultimate Ferris or Cameron in your life. Till next time, take a day off, look around, and keep the memories alive.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.